Go ahead.
So, hello guys. We start now our first turn. This is my US mech platoon force. I have two mech platoons. For the first one, I bought an additional dragon team. The second one is standard. Then I took also two VATs with me, a tank company of 3 M1s, and of course copperheads with a fist observer. And that's 52 points for me.
Okay, the Soviets are attacking south into Austria. They are anchored by a company minus of BMP-2s with the full infantry support comes along with it. In the center you have a team of Gremlin anti-aircraft missile teams. Won't come in use as Simon did not choose to bring his Cobras along. It's led by a T-72 battalion commander, two T-72 companies of 3 T-72s each, and then two Hinds in support. They have chosen to go with the hasty attack to try to catch the Americans off guard. The Americans have chosen to defend, so we'll roll shortly for the mission and go over the terrain. Okay, as was mentioned, the Soviets are attacking south into Austria. This will be the board that we're playing on today. The mission is counterattack, and as the attacker, as the Soviet player, I've chosen to attack during the daylight. So on the right-hand side of the board, you have the American objective and deployment zone. They will deploy half their forces in this board quarter, with the other half of their forces being in immediate reserve, and they can put one unit in ambush. Directly across the table from them is the Soviet deployment zone, where they will start all of their forces. And then all the way across the river, you have a second objective. Now the American victory conditions for this game is to start any turn after 6 with no Soviet infantry or tank units within 16 inches of either objective. And then the Soviets win if they hold one of the two objectives anytime after turn 6. So thus begins the campaign Firestorm, Red Thunder.
Huzzah!
Okay, go ahead.
So folks, this is my deployment. I deployed the bigger infantry squad with the additional dragon team here in a line. 2 dragon team missiles and the HQ are inside of this building. Behind them I placed the M103 personal carriers. Here I placed the infamous copperheads, and here's the observer.
Okay, and on the Soviet side, we're kind of scrunched for space, but we've made it all work out. So you see one tank platoon on the right anchoring that side, along with the battalion commander kind of towards the rear. In the center, we have all the infantry dismounted. Now they can deploy up to 8 inches apart from the unit leader, who is directly in the middle. And then we have the BMP spread out as well. I have 4 BMPs facing to the left of the board, along with a tank platoon, as Simon reserves are going to come in that corner by the road to make sure I don't get that objective. So we'll be back after Soviet turn 1. Soviets have pushed up their right flank to threaten the American lines. All 4 tanks shot at the infantry that's dug in, with only the battalion commander hitting, but the American base made his 2 3+ saves, so no damage was done. Otherwise, infantry pushes up the middle, supported by the BMPs. On the left, T-72s have taken a position to watch out for American reserves, while the BMP-2s support them in that effort. My Hinds flew back to shoot at the 109s. Before they got a shot off, one of the 50 caliber machine guns from one of the 109s managed to take him down. The last remaining one hit, failed the firepower check, and only bailed out the 109. They subsequently failed their morale check, and they have left the battle.
Okay, this is US turn 1. The bailed out M119 could manage to be remounted. Reserves roll, unfortunately, it didn't give me any reserves, so I have to fight with what I have. Then I just moved a bit the M113s, 3 here, 2 here. These M113s were shooting at the BMPs, did do no damage. The Dragoons from this platoon were also shooting BMPs, tried to explode this one. The Copperheads with the fist observer managed to destroy this BMP. Infantry saws were shooting at this squad, managed to hit 1 time, but infantry save was successful. And the 2 other Dragoons were shooting at the tanks causing no damage. And of course this M113s were shooting at the infantry unit there and also couldn't manage to do anything.
On the top of turn 2, the Soviets started to do some damage. The BMP-2s moved up, engaged those 113s, hitting 3 times, bailing 2 and destroying 1. The BMP that you see in the rear there did not manage to land any hits on the observer who had gone to ground, needing 6 ups. Fired off with some RPGs, but they are slow firing, so I was needing 6 to hit the infantry in the buildings and in the foxholes, so I didn't land any hits there. And the tanks also failed. Well, the tanks managed to destroy 1 M113, making them take a morale check, which they passed on a 4-up. After that, we moved to the assault phase. I got 2 tanks into the assault, made 1 of the assault checks, and destroyed 1 large infantry base. Simon made his counterattack roll with the Americans. I failed my counterattack roll, so I had to move my tanks back and get ready for Simon's turn 2.
Okay, this is US turn 2. It was a successful reserve roll. Brahms approached from this side. In the shooting phase, from 6 shots, just 2 tried to hit, managed to hit, and I failed the firepower check on a double 1, snake eyes. So going over here, in the movement phase, actually everything stayed in line, no big movements. The Dragoon teams from here managed to destroy this BMP. Then were coming a lot of shots from the infantry, from the SAWs and from the M16. Managed to kill several infantry platoons. The M113 also added some shots. In result of this one, the infantry is pinned down. Then the Lone Dragoon from here aimed for this tank commander unit here, hit it. Then the failed armor save and tried to explode this tank. And the copperheads of the fist observer could see this lone T-72 here. So 2 hits. 1 armor save was failed, and I tried to destroy this tank.
And thankfully my tank commander was able to hop out of his tank and join the other tank. When it came to the morale check, the Soviets passed it. I actually attached my battalion commander to the lone tank and made that save. And then with my 2 bailed out tanks over here, they also needed a check. They also passed, needed a 3 or better. Top of Soviet turn 3 saw a reshuffling to their left flank to meet the new Abrams threat. I shot 3 BMP-2 missiles at them, and then 3 T-72s. 1 of the BMP-2 missiles managed to penetrate but failed the firepower check, and 1 of the T-72s also penetrated but failed the firepower check, rolling a 1. And Simon just rolled a 6, so his unit morale remains intact. He'll see if he can get those bailed out tanks back into action. On the right flank, pretty good stuff for the Soviets as the BMPs move forward. They managed to wipe out the remaining 113s on Simon's right. And then 2 shots from the T-72s managed to kill the 3rd one, so that unit's now wiped out. The battalion tank commander then assaulted into the dug-in infantry, failed to wound anybody, but the Americans failed their counterattack roll and have been moved out of their foxholes as we start to turn the American left flank. So plenty still left to do as Simon goes into his turn 3.
So US turn 3. Unfortunately I didn't roll good for the reserve rolls, but automatically 1 unit comes inside. I have chosen this mech infantry platoon. I blitzed moved them here on this road, and then I road dashed them 32 inches until here. The tanks, I just switched them inside the cornfield that they get concealment, but can shoot with without penalties. They hit it 5 times the T-72s, destroyed 2, and at the end of the round, they unfortunately, or fortunately for me, failed their morale check. So going on this side, I tried to move the copperheads. Unfortunately, 2 failed their cross check, so they are bogged down here. This 1 unit made it, and in the shooting phase, it managed to destroy this BMP-2. So Here, these units, I just shuffled them here in this fence. Everything actually then stayed still. Then in shooting, I destroyed one BMP. One is just getting bailed out. And the shooting of all the laws, the SAW teams tried or managed to kill 3 infantry. So 2 RPGs and 1 AK platoon. So this is turn 3.
So while my T-72s failed to make their morale check, thankfully my BMP-2s in the forward edge of our spearhead managed to make theirs and still in the game. So the 3 BMPs guard the bridge across the river, engaged the M1s and the 113s bearing down on them. They managed to penetrate a 113 with an anti-tank guided missile, but failed firepower check of a 3 up, only bailing him out. And then pinned an M1 tank, again failing to make the firepower check on that M1 and only bailing him out. Big action was on the right flank as the Soviets moved into attack. Starting off with their PKM machine guns, they landed a total of 4 hits. That combined with the AK-47 fire managed to pin down the Americans. A bunch of infantry bases moved into attack along with the T-72 battalion commander and what's left of that platoon. It was a rough, bloody battle. Eventually the Americans fell back, but they didn't take too many losses while the Soviets did. But we did manage to push them back quite a ways. And then now they are out of their foxhole, so we're looking forward to the next turn to maybe finally take that objective and see if we can hold it against the incoming American firepower. It will be tough. Lastly, the BMP-2s, they had pushed up the middle, engaged the 109s, destroying one and bailing another. They made their 4+ check. We'll see if they decide to get back in that abandoned 109 or if it will remain bailed out. It's a very close game. Be interesting to see where it goes as we go to Simon's bottom of turn 4. He'll get his last unit of reserves in.
Okay, so turn 4, yeah. Americans, the VATs appeared as reserves. I couldn't remount this guy, so he's still bailed. And so yes, I couldn't go on road dashing, so I just placed my M113s there. I shot my M113s at this BMP and I managed to bail him out. My tanks, I moved here over this river. Unfortunately, I failed one cross-check on a 2+, so this one is bailed out. They moved like this. In the shooting phase, this Abrams managed to hit this T-72, just bailed him out. This M1 destroyed one BMP of this unit. Direct fire of this M109 destroyed another BMP. The shooting of the infantry just caused one casualty. And yes, in the end, here moral check succeeded. The moral check of the infantry failed, so the infantry is completely gone. So yes. And
then we succeeded on the BMP-2 platoon as well, but since the infantry is gone, so are the BMPs, so they'll be taken off the board, leaving the Soviets with just 2 T-72s. And I think with that, we'll call it a day and restack and maybe reattack. Stay with us for after battle thoughts.
So yes.
All right, Simon, that was a pretty good game to start off our campaign.
That was really awesome.
Unfortunately, it was a U.S. victory. The Soviets tried and tried, but just couldn't get the job done.
Yeah, I think the first thing, what I have to say about my deployment zone was that on the one, I think the 109s, the Copperhead, the deployment was somehow, yes, it was two-edged. On the one side, I just denied the whole right flank, so his tanks and BMPs on his left flank just stayed behind cover in the forest, so they even didn't try to go over the river and get the objective over there. So at this point, I denied the whole right flank of you. On the other side, or the back side of this one was that I had to trade off in a way that on the left flank I couldn't get shots into you.
And I gotta say, where you put your objective really mattered, because it was within 4 inches of the building, And when I finally dislodged your infantry, all I did was retreat back into the building.
Yes.
And by that time, I didn't have enough infantry to assault the building and push you out again. It was getting pretty desperate for me at that point. So
Yes.
well-placed objective on your side.
Thank you. But well, I have also to say in this kind of or at this point where this assault was, I think the assault was a good move. But unfortunately, you sustained 2 less casualties to my units. So you were trading off actually like 4 on your own units from 1 of mine, and because of this objective was in 4 range of this building, so I just could go inside the building and contest it.
Well, really, there was 4 critical points of the battle.
Yes.
I think the first one was in round 1 when I moved my Hinds around to attack your M109s. Knowing your bads were off the table, I felt like I had some pretty good odds to destroy some 109s and very little threat back to me. Simon got to shoot 2 of his 109s at me at close range and a 3rd one at long range, and unfortunately managed to destroy one with a 50 caliber machine gun. And then my remaining Hind decided he had enough of this campaign and flew east, or maybe west, I don't know. But he's no longer with us, that's for sure.
Yes, it was very critical because you lost your mobility, your air superiority. So you couldn't do. I mean, you were then forced somehow just to operate there in the front of me. Yes, it was very critical, and I think we counted it. It was about like 4% chance that I can manage to do something. So this was very, very lucky. Turn 2. Well, turn 2 was first that the Abrams didn't show up.
Well, they did at the beginning
yes.
of turn 2.
Yeah, they did.
So when they did show up, they had some pretty good shots at my T-72s. What I had done in my deployment is obviously I pushed the bulk of my forces up the right flank to threaten Simon's objective, and then held a holding force over on my left flank, knowing that those M1s would be coming down that road eventually, which they did. And they had some pretty good shots at my T-72s, albeit at range.
Yes, and unfortunately I failed the firepower check with snake eyes.
Yeah, the range really didn't help me as I rolled pretty poorly on my armor saves. But then when you did penetrate 2 snake eyes, and critically I passed my morale check there and then remounted the tanks. But before we go to my turn, the other thing that was critical in that turn is you pinned my infantry with your 50 calibers from your 113s and also your saws. Really delaying the Soviet attack one more turn, allowing you one more turn.
Yes, particularly that you couldn't unpin them in the 3rd round, so they were stuck in there, so I could go on with shooting. I think it was a good idea that you didn't shoot at my infantry with your tanks, just on the N113s, because when you want to try to assault me, so it will be always defensive fire, and the amount of shots when it just stays, I mean, it's like at least 3 of one piece. So when two were there already, still there already, so 6 shots. Then all the saws. I mean, I would probably pin you again.
Yeah.
And the next thing would be also, if you try to assault, I would pin you anyway again.
It really hurt me. Obviously, shooting at my reduced rate of fire. The RPGs are still allowed to shoot at the full 1, but the AK-47s aren't allowed to shoot at their full 3. So even there, it hurt my firepower.
Yeah, and like in this way, I could just delay your attack one round more. So was also good.
Yeah. So at the start of my turn 3, my T-72s remounted, and between them and the BMPs that I held as my holding force on my left flank, managed to pin your M1s twice.
Yes.
And again, which seems to be the case a lot with your M1s, when I fail the firepower checks, it comes back to haunt me every time. And it did severely come back to haunt me this game.
Yes, and I think also was crucial when I just watched the whole game that I am passing mostly the crucial or the very important moral checks, because I think a 4-up is still like a 50% chance.
Yeah, and really morale is the Achilles heel of the American forces. So when you're passing those morale checks, it makes it very difficult for the Soviets to win, especially when they're not taking the M1s out, because strength in numbers matters for the Soviets, but for the Americans, essentially if I kill an M1, it's like killing 2 tanks, because you got that 2 shots per.
Yes.
And so that's why it's so critical for me to destroy them.
Yes, that's really critical. Well, overall, I think, I mean, as I mentioned before, the M109, I was not satisfied with the deployment of them, but at least I denied the flank there. The rest, I think the infantry performed well, mostly, particularly shooting at you infantry. I mean, mostly I had over average hitting, so it was good. And yes, the VATs, well, what shall I say? I mean, I didn't need them actually.
Yeah, 50 calibers proved enough today for the two Soviet Hinds, so didn't need them at all. Okay, well, we'll be back for another game though, so please check that one out, and hope you enjoyed this one. Leave a comment if you did, or if you see that we did something wrong or can make improvements, also leave a comment for that too.
So, see you later.
До свидания.